It's a red.
Welcome, curious ones. And I mean that word in the best sense of the word curious, of course, because you wouldn't be here if you were not curious about what you're going to hear tonight and what Carlos Kalmar might have to say about it. He's the music director of the Oregon Symphony. I am merely Robert McBride of All Classical Portland, honored to be here again.
You're nearly.
Merely.
Merely.
Well,
Near.
okay.
Go. Uh-oh, look at what.
I want to make sure y'all know that the Oregon Symphony has revealed their plans for next season. Their plans are quite extraordinary. There will be 3 concerts with significant visual elements, which will be great fun. Things like lighting and glass sculpture from Dale Chihuly. And even Mr. Lion King himself will be creating who knows what, he doesn't know yet. You're gonna perform Stravinsky's Persephone. I can't believe it. I never thought I would get to hear that piece.
See, you just have to come to the Oregon Symphony.
It is so beautiful, and it's so elegant, and it's so little known.
Don't tell
And that's
me,
the one that Michael Curry will be involved with.
Yeah, and don't tell me you actually have heard Turangalila live.
I have. I got on the train and went to Seattle to hear the Seattle Symphony play it a couple years ago because I thought I'd never get another chance. They're doing it next year. And that will be with the lighting.
That actually will be with, that is, I mean, every project that we do, sorry that we have to talk about next year, grab one of these.
Yes, they're on the table.
Yeah, they're on the table. But
in the lobby, I mean.
In terms of the 3 outstanding projects that we have for next season in our subscription series, I don't know which one to pick because, of course, Michael Curry, Mr. Lion King, working with puppetry on Persephone by Stravinsky, that will be like, wow. Dale Chihuly's glasswork in Bluebeard's Castle by Bela Bartok.
I also went to Seattle to see Seattle Opera do that because I didn't think I'd get a chance to hear it. Can I get my money back for all the money I spent in Seattle?
You get a free. You can come to the concerts for free as long as you talk to me.
Deal.
And the other project which is Turangalila by Olivier Messiaen, there is a technique in videography and that type of art that is called mapping.
What does that mean?
Usually when you see video installation, etc., you put a screen, a wide screen like having a movie. And mapping actually doesn't use a screen, it utilizes what's here. So essentially...
Yeah, I said lighting, but it's much more than that. It's a video thing, and it'll be both.
It's whatever Rose wants and her class of intellectual geniuses invent. I mean, it will be seeing the schnitz like never before. Because I know that it will not only be this part, it will all, God knows what.
How many people have heard Messiaen's Turangalila Symphony in concert? Whoa, nobody.
Just you wait.
You must come. Oh, you got one back there.
We had one sign over there.
It's imagine a psychedelic Bollywood acid trip movie all about love in the 1960s in a 8-movement symphony or whatever it is. 10 movements. It's incredible. It's over the top.
Yes, very.
Very over the top, but really fun. So we should probably talk about tonight's concert too.
Yeah, because talking of over the top, tonight.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Slightly.
All the way here tonight, I had a rhythm pounding in my brain.
Oh boy.
The planets, Mars, the bringer of war, from the planets. So you're doing all of The Planets by Gustav Holst in the second half of the concert.
Of course. I mean, The Planets of Holst is a piece, without the planets of Gustav Holst, we all know that. So let me just repeat it for the sake of it. Without the planets of Gustav Holst, the genius of John Williams would not even exist. It's as simple as that.
At least in Star Wars.
At least in Star Wars, because John Williams actually is amazing absolutely amazing. But when you then hear the planets of Gustav Holst, written a couple of years earlier, you think like, here comes.
You know, it's so interesting to think this music was written right during the First World War, which was just this cataclysmic time. And here's this English guy writing this music that is so far out some of the time and dealing with astrology and concepts like that, and also very earthy sometimes and very English sounding sometimes. Wow, what a time and what a place and what an incredible score. And this piece is a great example of why live music is best. You can get a great recording of the planets by a great orchestra, and maybe you have a great playback system at home, but you won't hear what it really sounds like. For example, you'll notice the difference between 4 flutes and 3 flutes is pretty significant. And you're much less likely to notice that in a recording.
Actually, when you listen to a recording of, and you are really familiar with classical music, and you know your Beethoven and your Brahms and all those by heart, you listen to the planets of Holst on your, let's say, a really good system, and here and there you will think there's something strange in the kind of texture, and it's because when Holst wrote this piece, amongst other things, he was very concerned that this piece would ever be played, because the requirements for the orchestra are, yes, it's a tricky piece, but that's not what he was concerned. He was concerned about instrumentation. He uses a bunch of instruments that you probably will never see again, or very, very rarely. There is
bass oboe?
Bass oboe.
What the heck is a bass oboe?
It's a thing. It's an oboe, just grumbles over there. So in terms of the bass oboe is one, and the other one, actually, because you mentioned you are going to hear the difference between 3 flutes and 4. Well, one of the flutes is a bass flute, not an alto flute. Alto flute happens here and there in music, bass flute. So there are, and the thing is that Holst manages to put those instruments in a very distinctive spot. You just, if you don't have the score in front of you, you might think, this is a strange sound. I can hear flutes, but to my knowledge, one of the flutes is just playing way too low. A flute doesn't reach there. Well, it's a bass flute.
Which is a hard instrument to play. Now you'll notice, speaking of recordings, a lot of microphones around here tonight. The very talented gentlemen from Sound Mirror in Boston are here recording again. So we will be recording for broadcast on All Classical Portland, so please make extra sure your phones are turned off, and if you think you might need a cough drop, I've got one here. I always bring these just in case. I don't want to be that person that has a sudden coughing fit and not be able to do anything about it,
Well, if you cough, there are plenty of spots in this concert you can cough.
Yeah. Coughing would be best in the first movement, probably.
Yeah, the first, when we talk about Mars, the bringer of war, yeah, fine. Just not in the second, please. Not a good idea. The thing with the planets of Gustav Holst is, this is one of the many phenomenons where a composer writes during his lifetime a lot of music which nobody knows. And there is the one piece. And I know, because today in the morning I listened to these fellows. They were with there was the transmission from the Met, where they were doing Cavalleria Rusticana and Pagliacci, another 2 examples of people, Mascagni and Leoncavallo, 2 great composers of Italy, who wrote considerably more music that nobody knows. And they are known for one piece. And I think, from what I read, that Holst actually hated the planets. Not because he thought it's a bad piece, on the contrary, but everybody said, "Oh, Maestro Holst, you wrote the planets." And he said, like, "Oh, here they go again." The thing with the planets, which is, I think, very important, is it's not a set of symphonic poems. It's not, he didn't intend to describe the Greek goddesses or stuff like that. He actually links the music very much to astrology. It's like a characterization of what he feels the planet is telling us. And of course, you look at all these movements that are there and you think, where is Earth? Well, no Earth. That's a conscious decision. And where is Pluto? Well, not yet discovered in 1918. But other than that, of course, I would say that probably some movements of the planets are more well known than others, Mars being way on the top, because Mars it's a movement that he wants actually to describe, at least he talked to Sir Adrian Boult, the conductor of the premiere, about that. He wants to describe a little bit the stupidity of war. Mars, the bringer of war, and the stupidity. So when you think about how do you describe musically the stupidity of anything, it's likely that you are going to repeat something over and over and over and over. For example, there is, in terms of describing the stupidity of war, if that is what you believe in, I know another piece where a composer did exactly that with exactly the same technique, which is Shostakovich Symphony No. 7, where he describes exactly the same phenomenon by repeating over and over until, yeah, can I move away from that? No, you have to listen again. And also the sheer brutality of that first movement. Every time I have the pleasure of conducting that movement, I feel at the end, I mean, how long is the movement? 7.5 minutes, something like that. At the end, I think like, oh, we all need a break. And then I know, oh, no break. There are still 40 minutes to go of quite intense music. And in terms of what the planets say to us, it's the contrast of what it does is amazing. Mars is first, meaning war is first, peace is second. And it's exactly as far away from brutality as you can go, and quite simple in its tone. And Mercury, the winged messenger, is third, very, very kind of nervous. I always thought that one of the most interesting movements is number 4, Jupiter, this jolly fellow, so to speak, because even the first time I studied the score, I mean, one day I will go to Great Britain and talk to a scholar there who will explain to me that actually everything goes together very well. So there is Jupiter really kind of in a certain way of happiness and fast and rousing and so on. And then it dies down and all of a sudden, without any real connection in terms of character, there comes something that you identify as very British, a very English melody that Holst develops for a while until it grows bigger. It's a technique that he uses very often in the planets. Something that he has in mind is repeated and grows bigger, and it's as if the Queen of England is arriving. And then you go back to, oh, happy Jupiter. Very interesting.
His favorite movement supposedly was Saturn.
I understand. I like that idea. I
Why?
like that because, I mean, look, I like the planets. I really love that piece. But maybe he thought that that is one of the deepest. Maybe it's that. Because it's not that there is lack of depth in the other movements, but you look at Mars and it is, with the exception of a middle section, it's kind of one-dimensional. It's like, boom! And Venus, the bringer of peace, it's very calming and soothing, etc., etc., etc. And when it comes to Saturn, the bringer of old age, maybe it's also because Holst wanted the movement to be understood in the sense of what happens when we get to old age and die. Allegedly, which I thought, that's funny. It's a challenge for us conductors. The way you interpret that movement, Saturn, the bringer of old age, is the way you approach your own aging. Since I read that, I'm scared to death about things like, oh boy.
So your hair will get progressively grayer during the course of that movement. The ending, Neptune the mystic, really does get very mystical, and at the end we just disappear.
Yeah, you think, you hear a piece like The Planets and you think, well, that's such a wonderful piece. I know that I bombard you every time you hear something like that. You think, oh, he has said that before. You know, we conductors, we like to stand there and it's loud and boomy. The ending of Mars is fantastic because it's the piece, The Planets, which is a large piece of music, ends exactly in the opposite direction. I adore that ending because, first of all, in terms of mysticism, the one thing that he does very intelligently is it's not only, yes, it is slow, but the meter in which the piece is written is unusual because it's 5 beats to the bar, which gives you a little bit of sense of floating. Also where he puts the chords is a little like, and very at the end, the music gets a hint faster, and from the very distance, you will hear a new sound that I'm sure at the start you will not know what it is. Well, you are in the pre-concert talk, and probably you read the program, so you know it's female voices. And then female choruses takes pretty much over the rest of the piece until they take the piece into a new sphere and the piece dissipates and they are going to be back there in the lobby. It's an amazing ending.
So you saved a lot on tickets for them because you didn't need to give them tickets because they're stuck in the lobby. So that was clever.
Well, the thing is, I even told them, ladies, because this wonderful ladies from Portland State University and Ethan Sperry, with whom I love working, I told them, you know, so the good news for this concert is you don't need to dress up because nobody's going to see you. Well, maybe think again, because Ethan actually wants them to take a bow with him, so they might be marching down the... And I told them, well, I have good news. Later in the season, last concert, same ladies are going to do Mahler 3 with us, which is pretty much the same phenomenon. You are there and you sing for, in Mahler it's even longer, you sing for 5 minutes. In Holst you sing for 3, if even. So they always have something to do.
So we skipped over Uranus, but it's actually the weirdest planet in the solar system because the others all spin around like tops, and Uranus rolls like a barrel. Its poles are weird, strange. I don't know if Holst knew that or not, probably not. So what we've talked about so far is the second half of the concert. And now you know, at intermission, if you're going up to the bar, and you see an attractive person, of a single person of whatever sex you may find attractive, the line to use is, "What's your sign?" All right, so we should talk about the piano concerto on this program because nobody will have heard these 4 parables by Paul Schoenfield, which are incredibly great fun, kind of Gershwin-esque, sorta, and just a real adventure.
Well, yeah, well, Gershwin-esque in the sense...
He's disagreeing with me.
No, no. Because, yeah, Gershwin-esque, if you want to call anything that has something to do with orchestral jazz, Gershwin-esque. Well, Gershwin was the big master and the initiator of that, but this goes so much further in pretty much anything you can even imagine. So Paul Schoenfield, from what I remember, born 1947 in Detroit, and he is, the thing with Paul, Schoenfield is that he, in his life, he lived in many, many places. And in a way, his music is a little bit that way. He wanders everywhere. And if you think, one thing is for sure, well, think twice, because the next moment he's going to hit you with a surprise. I give you a couple of examples. First movement of the four parables, rambling until the butcher cuts us down. Starts incredibly quiet, like, you are like, oh, this is nice, and a little clarinet melody, and yeah, and then you go, it's so a hell of a fast ride, it's unbelievable. And you think like, what the hell is happening? It's and essentially, I mean, all these movements have a background. Because a friend of Schoenfield told him, you know, you've lived, and why don't you write music that somehow has something of your personal history, meaning things you witnessed, things you wanted to get involved with, things that you read, anything. Rambling until the butcher cuts us down is essentially about the debate that happened long years ago here in the United States about what to do and whether to release from prison a quadriplegic murderer. No wonder the music is as it is. And the movement number 2, Senility's Ride, that actually, Senility's Ride is about this guy who is losing his mind. So you think, and probably that is exactly what happened, Alzheimer's. But sometimes the guy remembers, oh, life was so cool, and I went dancing, and and you hear it. It's also, it starts like sitting in a bar at night, and kind of your mind wanders off, and then you become lucid again, and the music picks up the pace, and you feel like, oh wow, and until the mind goes away again. Sorry. So that's great. The third movement, in terms of musical language, is the most modern. It's an elegy. Because this is the only movement that stays very slow all the time. And the language the harmonics are very eerie, and it gets in the middle incredibly even aggressive and screams like in pain, until at the end it just goes away. It kind of, the ending is kind of peaceful. I can't really explain the ending, what it means. Maybe it has the meaning of coming to peace with whatever idea is there. The elegy has something to do with the fact that there was a probably friend of Schoenfield who was convinced by religious fanatics that it's a very bad idea to go to the doctor when you're sick, and he died because of that. And I mean, that's where you hear kind of the screaming and the pain. And maybe that's why the ending is so like you drift away. And the last movement, which is, it's complicated in the writing, but it's so much fun. It's unbelievable. Doc Haven. So there was this lady who had 2 children, and the children probably misbehaved, as children sometimes do, and so she took away the family pet. And of course the children were devastated, and Paul Schoenfield knew the children, and he invented for them a story about Dog Haven, where Haven is all for dogs. There are bones everywhere, and the dogs are dancing.
And there's a fire hydrant on every corner. Yeah, and in all that talk, it makes it sound like it's a long piece and 4 movements, but it goes by really fast because it's
very, it's over in a way, in a heartbeat. You barely catch your breath. Speaking of catching your breath, that's kind of the motto of tonight's program, because that is exactly what happens in the first piece, the Fireworks by Stravinsky. Just jokingly, I compared recordings of that. The slowest recording, please don't take out your watch and stop to think how fast we are, I don't know. Slowest recording is 4 minutes 10. Fastest is 3 minutes 29. Fireworks. Amazing music.
Aren't you glad you're here? Yeah, we're glad you're here too. Curious people, the curious listeners, they're the best ones. Enjoy the concert. I know you will. What's your sign, Carlos?
I am a Pisces.
So am I. Carlos Kalmar.
When is your birthday?
March 4th.
Mine is February 26th.
Should we get together for drinks? Yeah. Thank you. Happy birthday.
Will happen.
Carlos.
Robert.
Night. That was fun.